Everyone listening is either an adolescent or remembers the horrors of being an adolescent. This time is rambunctious. This time is rebellion. This time was meant to be yours, on a stage, or rather plastered on one, where the whole world was watching you, to catch the moment you would finally fall apart. The only continuity you ever knew was change, and you were never equipped to deal with it. This is Alicia Solivera, and I'm here to tell you about adolescents, their increasingly complex relationships, and what happens when those newly developed social dynamics go wrong. If we are getting technical, adolescence is said to begin with the onset of puberty, with the average age being 11 for girls and 12 for boys, and ending when a person is a viable and stable adult. For most, this occurs in the 20s, but for some, this may never occur. Kidding, of course. Anyway, adolescence is a difficult time, to say the least. I like to define adolescence as an exploration of identity amongst biological and social chaos. During adolescence, there is an explosion of societal expectations. This is coupled with hormones waging war on the body, changing chemical balances, and disrupting the internal peace we have been used to. All of this can be very confusing for adolescents who are doing their best to fit into changing standards. One more thing, in terms of changing complexity, really reaches its peak in adolescence, and this is their social interactions. Peer networks are getting increasingly more dynamic, and this time marks the onset for many for intimate romantic relationships. The formation of romantic relationships is a key developmental step. This is the first time, aside from their parents, that they have close connections that are truly altruistic in nature, meaning the adolescent is able to be a caregiver or a caregiver-like figure, to think about someone else complexly and worry about the way they're behaving and worry about each other's problems in a way they're not normally used to. And this allows them to be able to find themselves in the other person. They're able to discuss their hopes and dreams for the present as well as the future. They are given another support system that will follow them through all their ups and downs, and they're given a protection against the self-harm that can be inflicted by other students. However, many aren't as lucky. The halls, the classroom, the cafeteria all become places of constant torment, and the opposite sex isn't around to help. If anything, they're a part of the problem. I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to talk to a few people about their experiences with harassment. I will start with a girl age 17, very sweet, very shy, yet has found herself targeted for victimization. Have you had ever experienced any instances of sexual harassment?
I think so, but I'm not really sure. What is sexual harassment constitute?
Like what constitutes sexual harassment?
Yeah, sexual harassment.
The definition of sexual harassment is any unwanted or unwarranted attention that is persistent in nature and has some type of basis in sex or sexuality. It could be anything like unwanted touching or like sexual comments or jokes about your body that you're like, no thank you. Or it could be like weirdly asking you out after you said no and like demanding an explanation and you're like, whoa, hold up, please.
Well, yeah, I guess so. In that case, I guess so. It wasn't very, obvious type of sexual harassment. It was more just very persistent. And even after I've said no many times, the worst part was how I see him every day. So that's really awkward because I don't want to be mean. And this also, so weird and very uncomfortable in in a lot of in our friend group and just in class also, and anytime he was near me, because sometimes he would or anytime I was alone by my locker, because his locker is right next to mine, and I would just always try to go to my locker really quickly so that way I could avoid him and I wouldn't have some random person poking me, because that's, I don't know, that's just
no fun,
right? And Yeah, I think the worst part was on my birthday when he put flowers and like chocolates and like taped it to my locker, and since I don't really use my locker, I didn't notice until at the end of the day, so that was on my locker the whole day. So yeah, and I think I made it clear that we were just friends. So I don't know if that's a gift you give to your friends, like, you know, like flowers and a note that says, "Here's a kiss," you know? So that's kind of awkward. And then the next day, he's in the library, because that's usually where I sit. He was saying, like, I was sitting down and all like my friends were there, and then like it was full, and he was saying, like, "So did you like the kiss?" And I'm like, "Excuse me." Like in my head, I was just dying because because I felt like he was trying to make it sound like it was something that it wasn't. Because, you know, like, did you like the kiss? Like, because since the chocolate was a Hershey's kiss, so I was just like, I didn't know what to say. I just felt really uncomfortable. Awkward, and I don't want to go through that again. Should I mention like the doubt you have? Cause
yeah, I mean that's always like the biggest thing that I always try to get to is like no one realizes it's sexual harassment, because if he did, he wouldn't keep doing it, right?
And there's also like I wasn't really sure if there was an actual like problem or if I was just being too crazy or like, you know, paranoid or.
Yeah, that's the weird thing, wondering if it's your fault or if it's actually a problem.
Yeah, like if I'm just, maybe I'm doing something wrong, or like I'm not being clear enough, or yeah, or like, and it's also like I don't want to be rude or mean, so yeah.
Yeah, so many expectations to be like the nice, quiet girl who's like not a bitch.
Yeah, like, well, because it's also like, because, you know, there's cases where like if someone like hits you or something, like I'm in the street randomly, obviously you have a right to get angry and say something, but when it's like people you know and it's not very obvious, then you don't really, you don't know if you should say something or not,
or like how to say it,
or how to say it, yeah. And then you'll say something, but they won't understand, and then
you're like, do you just keep repeating yourself?
Yeah.
Or do they even want to understand?
Yeah, like, I shouldn't have to be the one who has like to like think about it and like, you know, like start things and try to fix something that I'm not. Yeah, that's not my fault that I'm not doing.
It's funny when you like read all these like qualitative studies that like tell you what's happening and like they tell you what people should be feeling, you know, because they like take all these and then they like summarize it. They're like, yeah, on average, this is how people react. And then it's even more funny to like talk to people and then to follow the same. It's the same. It's just what the studies say.
Yeah.
But sometimes you wonder like, well, if all this research has been done, but nothing has actually been accomplished, what's the point?
Yeah, like you sometimes wonder if it's going anywhere or.
Yeah, because it's hard. Like, what can be done? Like, these aren't easy problems to fix.
Yeah, and it's not like it's very like I guess you could say like gray.
Yeah, there's a lot of gray area, so it's hard to like put lines, define things. Well, when this happens, this should be done.
Yeah.
But I mean, fighting can be just as big. I mean, it's, you know, when someone punches you, it doesn't matter like how hard they punch you, right? So it shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always a gray scale. Why should this one be any different? After that, I met up with one of my guy friends to ask him about his experiences. And strangely enough, they weren't that different from the experiences of my friend who is a girl. Let's get to it. What do you think of when you think of peer harassment?
I think it depends. I mean, I think that it can be as extreme as like people touching you or violating your space. For instance, when a person is being really possessive of you, it sucks because you're in that position and they think that they can treat your body in any way they want to. They can just touch your chest and touch your muscles and touch anything about you, and that's not okay. You know, even if that person likes you like times a billion, they just want to marry you. They have pictures on your wall that are like Mr. Madeira. Like, I want to marry Dominic and be Mrs. Madeira or Mr. Madeira. I don't judge. Who cares? I mean, it could go either way. But the thing is, there is a problem when people think that they are able to touch you in any way they want. I'll give you an example. In one of my classes, there's a girl who touches my chest and hits me playfully, but just a little too hard. And there's this possession idea, I think, where it's okay. It's okay to touch me. It's okay to get into my personal space, and it makes me incredibly uncomfortable. When a person touches your chest, how do you respond? I mean, they're touching your chest. You don't say, get the fuck off me. You can't say that to them, because then you know that you'd hurt their feelings. But really, it's your feelings that are the ones that are being violated by putting you in that position in the first place. And the sad thing about it is, even if someone's in love with you so much, if you don't want to be with them, then they can't make you want to like them. You can be their friend. You can like them immensely. But you can't force them to like you that way. And I think that's the faulty logic that a lot of men have, because my fellow men think, oh, it doesn't go that way. Men can't feel assaulted or violated or at harm sexually. But I don't think that's true. There's this gender complex that men are supposed to always want to be with a girl, no matter what, be the player, be the one that gets all the girls. That's the ultimate goal. And I don't think that that's fair, because there's a lot of people who just aren't interested in girl X or girl Y or boy Z, etc. The problem is, we have this notion in our society that you have to, that if someone likes you, that it's always a good thing, and that if they're touching you, that's always a good thing. But touch isn't always good. Touch is a very personal, intimate thing. When you're touching someone, you're giving them your trust. And when you're forcing someone to be touched, you're violating that trust.
Yeah, that makes sense. Entirely. So, Dom, I don't know how to put this, but do you think you've experienced any other types of sexual harassment?
I've been called a faggot. I've been called ugly. Been called fat. There are people who talked about me being brown. And there's that notion of inferiority because of being brown in that complex. That's probably not even about your research, but I'll just mention it just in case.
No, of course, it's alright. But while we're on this topic, do you think that type of inferiority complex has affected your ability to develop healthy relationships?
No, it has, for sure. The deal is, there's a lot of people out there who are ingrained in this. They're basically cultivated with the idea, because of TV, because of everything around them, that white is inherently better. I'll give you an example. In middle school, there were a lot of girls who were Latina and only wanted to date white guys. That was their main goal. They wanted to get with a white guy with blue eyes. They could have brown hair, but it had to be blue eyes. And that was the ultimate goal. And the problem here is that I feel like they were reaching for, maybe they were just like them, which totally makes sense, but also it was that was the ultimate goal. That was perfection. And on the other hand, there's a lot of people who, only want to date a specific race. And that makes, you can't, sexuality is not a political statement, so you can like whoever you want. But it's a bigger problem, I think, for people out there, because it's really related to our own biases as a society. And it's definitely I remember being a kid and watching PBS and saying, oh, this is the norm. White is the norm, right? Why am I not a little Jewish boy with curly hair? That was my notion when I was little. And I think that affects everyone, of color, in the world of sex and relationships in the teenage world.
These guys brought up some great points when it comes to the types of effects harassment can have on an adolescent. And two of the processes they kind of hint at unknowingly are the myth of individuality and the process of normalization. They correct the myth that people act solely because of who they are, and addresses the social and cultural context that influence the way people behave, because people are inevitably social creatures and are bombarded constantly with cultural and societal expectations and values. With these in mind, sexual harassment can be described as a learned behavior resulting from sexist beliefs and sexual stereotypes. If culture and shared values influence attitudes and expectations, males may just be fulfilling gender roles by acting out the stereotypes they think they should be. On the other hand, young women typically struggle with gender socialization, learning to expect and accept harassment and confusing sexual attention with acceptance. Interestingly enough, there was a case brought to the Supreme Court that tried to argue this very thing, this very process of girls normalizing harassment. This was the Davis versus Monroe County Board of Education, and it ended up binding teachers and other school administrators to reporting any instances of sexual harassment at the schools. However, by increasing the stringency and liability, schools are almost given an incentive to ignore sexual harassment. Too often, lines are drawn arbitrarily between what is assault and what can be dismissed as normal teenage behavior. When teachers let harassment persist, possibly from their inability to define harassment or to separate it from bullying, children and teenagers are taught that these are acceptable behaviors and just a part of normal relationship dynamics. Often, students will fail to label instances as harassment even though they meet the legal definition of harassment. I'm hoping that this podcast helps clear up what harassment is and can help both students, teachers, parents, or anyone really realize that you aren't alone, that your kids aren't alone, and that being harassed isn't your fault and it isn't their fault, and that no one is ever really to blame, but something should be done. I guess the most important thing to remember, though, is to be proactive and help yourself, help your community. If you see someone being harassed, tell someone. And if you are being harassed, well, reach out to your friends or family or administration until the crisis is resolved. You should never have to live with anything that makes you feel that uncomfortable. I guess thank you for everything. This was Alicia Silvera, and I will see you next time. Thank you.